For more than half a century, the BBC has captured the changing face of everyday life in London, Derry and the North West. In good times and bad times, this vibrant region has given us some of our finest singers and writers. These are the archives, and those were the days.
I think it's absolutely essential to preserve and hold on to archive footage, because what it is a memory of our community.
I think the existence of an archive is hugely important. If we don't know where we come from, I think it's doubly hard to know where we're going.
We need our memories to make sense of our lives today, and we need to remember you know, the stars of the past. We need to remember the places that we grew up in, and I think it's wonderful that this footage exists. I just wish there was more of it.
At number 38, first time in Undertones and Teenage Kicks.
Blasting their way onto the nation's biggest music show, these five energy-fueled lads unleashed a punk classic, On Top of the Pops.
The first we knew about our Top of the Pops appearance, we were up to town and they called into Fergal's work. Fergal worked for Radio Rentals at the time, and he had got the phone call from the record company to say that the record had charted and that we got Top of the Pops. For me, the occasion of Top of the Pops was overshadowed by the fact that I got pyjamas from my aunties. I was 19 years old and they heard that I was going to London to do Top of the Pops, and for whatever reason they thought I needed pyjamas. But that's my memory of doing Top of the Pops.
There's something about it. I don't think you can ever put your finger on what makes great music. It's that riff, it's that lyric. Teenage Kicks, I mean, it's almost a timeless quality. I don't even think they had a clue at the time that what they were writing was a little bit of genius in this part of the world. And time, I think, tells us that this music, they'll still be playing this stuff in 100 years. It's still the Derry anthem.
I think Teenage Kicks is just 2 minutes 26 of pure pop perfection. Everything about it is just magical for me. It's got an incredible chorus, it's got hand claps, it's got everything that a good pop song should have.
Teenage Kicks, the lyrics really explain the song. It's not a complicated or in-depth theme to the song. It's just about wanting to meet a girl that's in the local area and hoping that sometime you get the chance to meet her and hopefully it's the chance to get a date.
Any top 10 that you get chosen by top people, Teenage Kicks is always in it. And of course, the great John Peel, it was probably his favourite song of all time. So it was good enough for John Peel, it's good enough for me.
The fact that John Peel liked the record, and then when the record had stopped, he picked up the needle and played it for the second time. So it was played back to back, and we were like, God, this is absolutely, this is the most greatest thing. Now, even to this day, I've never heard a record played back to back, ever.
Derry people to this day absolutely adore the Undertones. Not just for the music they made, which was superb, but for what they represented. This is a Derry band who put Derry on the map.
We weren't trying to go against the Troubles in Northern Ireland. We knew that they were there, but it didn't prevent us from doing what we wanted to do. I don't think it changed anybody. And anyway, in Derry, if you got above your station, they would throw you in the river anyway.
Home again and back to Derry to see Billy Kelly in action.
A world away from showbiz pomp, 1955 saw another local hero slugging it out on a very different public stage. But he attracted as much acclaim as his pop successors. And the BBC cameras were there to document Billy Spider Kelly's preparations for the biggest fight of his life.
I'm the king of the jungle, they call
The British title.
Billy Kelly was a huge star, not only in Derry, but you go anywhere, practically in the world, anywhere where there's boxing, they will know of Billy Kelly. I never saw Billy box, but you knew of Billy Kelly and you knew of his father and what they had achieved in boxing.
The 22-year-old boxer is himself the son of a famous father, John Spider Kelly, who won the British and Empire featherweight titles 16 years ago.
When I was growing up, the Kellys were sort of bogside royalty because there was a dynasty there, or so there seemed to be. The position of being the great hero of Derry was being passed down from father to son. So it became not just an achievement in the past, but a living tradition almost.
Do you see where they trained? It was so primitive. This little room or this gym, wherever it was, produced a British and Empire champion.
His timing was perfect, his movement was perfect. He bobbed and weaved like no other fighter that any of us had ever seen. He wasn't a knockout specialist, but he was a specialist at avoiding knockouts. You know, people in the bogside fed off the glamour and fame of Spider Kelly. And it was all the more wonderful that you could actually see him in the morning running through the area. And wonderful that you could see his father, the previous Spider Kelly, cycling along.
Turning professional, he has worked his way up under the expert eye of his father, who, though retired from the ring, still paces his son through the streets of Derry on training runs.
My granda had a very long career in boxing. But I mean, when you think back to these times, it had over 100 professional fights. And my father, I suppose, followed on. There was a sort of a natural progression there, that he would follow in his father's footsteps.
Last October, Billy Kelly completed half of his father's double when he took the Empire title from Roy Ankra at the King's Hall.
I did notice one thing, that as he was going down the street, he seemed to have big army boots on, and apparently that's what he wore, so that when he went into the ring and he put on these light boxing boots, it felt he was gliding, it was on air, and that's what he did. And I did notice too, when he was running across Craigavon Bridge, a wee bit of a belly. He wasn't in great shape. And I would blame his wife, Pam, for that, because it takes you back to his house then, and you see her preparing steak for the champion.
Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones.
But the thing that amazed me most of all was, here you have the little baby sitting on the high stool, and Billy's cutting the steak, and he puts it over to the baby's mouth. And even the baby's saying, "Wise up, Dad." You know, and he keeps on, and he said, he's not going to give that to the baby, is he? And he puts it up to the baby's mouth, and the baby's sort of going, "Dad, I've no teeth. You know, take it away." And Billy said, "No, you're going to be a champion someday. You're going to be like me."
Actually, I am that baby in the high chair. Now 58 years ago. It is a big steak. It looks, as if somebody pulled the horns off a cow and sat it in a... And the reason that steak's there is, round the corner from our house was the slaughterhouse. So all the men in the slaughterhouse actually knew that he was fighting for the British and Empire title. And so we were very well fed with high quality meat.
He lifted people up in a way that nothing else did at the time. Here's something that we could do. Look at that. Here's Billy Kelly on the front page of the Daily Express with his fist raised above him in triumph. If you came from the bogside, you didn't get many opportunities to see something like that and to feel that sense of triumph and achievement and vindication that Billy Kelly supplied to us. So he was terrifically important, far beyond the sporting arena.
But beyond the sporting arena, for young people Billy's age, entertainment venues in downtown Derry were in short supply.
In the evening, there's not a great deal to do, and it's only on the teenage beat scene that there's variety, choice, and the odd big-name one-night stand.
However, the dawn of the swinging 60s saw more stars play Derry, and the admissible Embassy Court had a new generation jiving. Fashion-conscious factory girls boogied with boys with big hair, as this rare BBC film reveals.
The embassy, of course, was a very smart place to go to, but it was for slightly older girls. And it was much patronised by visitors to the town, particularly the sailors and airmen from Ballykelly and the boats that would come in. People dressed to the nines to go to the embassy. Factory girls particularly could come out of work, buy a remnant of something and have a dress ready to go out to the embassy that night. The floor was always crowded, but you had to be careful of the fact many Derry girls smoked while they danced, so there was always a lit cigarette hovering around about ear level, and you had to be careful. One of you would look in one direction, one of you look in the other, because you could be set light to from either end. The bands, of course, they were terrific. They got the big names, and it was very much a rather classy kind of place to go.
Coleraine is the university town of the new University of Ulster.
Fast forward to the 70s, and the 7-year-old University of Ulster at Coleraine was being given the once-over by a fresh-faced BBC reporter, Mike McKim. But would this academic newcomer pass its first test?
It was very interesting for me, that particular film, because I was actually at the new University of Ulster in Coleraine at the very time that was being shot. And so to be made to face some of those issues that Mike was talking about within that film was really interesting.
NUU's fundamental problem is its lack of students. There is just over half the projected number at the university at present. With 1,000 empty places to fill, NUU has little choice in its student intake.
It was trying to get across this message that the university wasn't operating correctly, vast sums of money had been spent, and it simply wasn't going to last, as though the university had been something of a mistake.
Despite a vociferous campaign on behalf of the City of Londonderry, the decision was taken to site the university on 300 acres given by the little market town of Coleraine.
In every Derry man's heart of hearts, they think, why did they put it there? It could have been so much better, so much faster, had it been located here, where there was already the hub of Magee College, which could perfectly adequately have been used to start it off.
Even all these years later, this simple decision not to put the university, the new university, in the heart of this cultural, historic city, and instead to stick it in a couple of fields outside Coleraine. And it's amazing, because even the guys in this footage, the locals are going, you know, we didn't want it. You know, the Coleraine people were so underwhelmed by getting a university.
What's the university meant to you now that's been here 6 or 7 years?
Well, it hasn't really been a benefit, like, in the long run.
I can't see that it's done any harm. Originally, when we heard that, you know, it was coming to Coleraine, we had the fear of drugs and things like that. But, as I say, it's done no harm.
Although it's often dubbed Coleraine University, the campus is outside the town and surrounded by fields. Indeed, it's often described as a 9-to-5 university.
As students, we weren't in the centre of Coleraine very much. We wouldn't have gone into town too much. We tended to stay on campus, and interestingly, they talk about it being a 9-to-5 university. I'm not sure quite why that is. People maybe were commuting more at that point, but we were there to stay.
A dynamic combination of sporting resources, state-of-the-art media equipment, and, new to Northern Ireland universities, an on-site creche, were all part of life for students at the Coleraine campus.
My first impression, I have to admit, of the university when I arrived up as a fresh-faced first year was that I may well have signed up to join a Soviet bloc sausage factory, because, I mean, it is a bit of a carbuncle.
Almost looked like a kind of Korean nuclear plant, because none of the foliage had grown, none of the trees had grown around it. It was just these stark white buildings.
There's nothing left. It's an amazing university for that sense that It may not look great, but there was a great sense of community in Coleraine and a great sense of student community, and there were people from all over the UK and Europe at the university when I was there. I thought it was a fascinating place. It was a real melting pot for cultures. There were a lot of very earnest young men there, and you can see those guys in the documentary. You can see the guys who've spent more time growing a beard than actually going to lectures. I love the footage of the students lounging about and reading papers and drinking tea and smoking, lying out right outside the refectory, you know. And it maybe doesn't do them many favours because it's playing into all the cliches about lazy students, but that's how I remember it, as lazing about in the summer, and it's great to see that old footage again.
For many, academic life contrasted sharply with dreams of the open road. And one such free spirit was Bangor grocer Jim Beck, who turned his childhood dreams of running away with the circus into a reality. Named after his wife, Jim launched Circus Della Beck, and the couple and their 3 young daughters headed northwest to entertain the crowds.
I know that my dad's circus brought a lot of joy into people's lives. In the 70s, when there was nothing, we actually were entertainment, which sounds a bit strange now, but we definitely were, and the people who came to see the circus wanted to see it. And at whatever town we put into, he was determined to make sure they enjoyed the show. So whether the tent was half full, Dad always got the audience to interact, and that generated a real buzz about the place. So he was quite a showman as well.
I want to have a drink with this guy. I want to meet this guy. I mean, he turns up in the town. And let's be honest about Jim and his circus. There are no tigers in this circus. There are no leopards. Jim has a couple of horses. Jim has a dog that jumps up and down. But he arrives in this sports car at the front of the cavalcade and the crowds turn up. Isn't there something absolutely magical about what this guy did?
Well, I can feel it.
I just thought that whole footage was absolutely hilarious from start to finish, just everything about it. The fact that he'd been a grocer and then decided, you know, and I think he had quite a successful cash and carry, and to just throw that all away. In a way, I really admired him, that he followed his dream, didn't he? You know, you think a lot of people have fantasies about things, but he actually put it into practice.
The stars of the show and the love of Jim's life are his Appaloosas, 8 matched stallions, and the reason for owning a circus.
He'd always had a passion for training horses. So he decided he trained them so well that Northern Ireland should see them. So the best way for that to happen was to start up a circus. And that's really how it all started. And then we were all taken off into this circus world, which was very different from our normal lives.
If life seemed like a circus for the Beck family, there was no clowning around for this hard-working clan. Behind the scenes of the big top, everyone had a role to play to keep this show on the road.
Down the line, I saw other artists doing acts, and I just thought, you know, I'm going to do that. And then I got my younger sister, and we decided to teach ourselves to do an aerial act. So we both taught ourselves, and the next thing we were a circus act in the big top. That's how it happened.
I absolutely hate clowns, and Bilbo the clown was a particularly creepy clown. It was bad, but the nose, that was the most award-winningly evil clown nose I've ever seen in my life. And it was just, I'm sorry, that really freaked me out. Bilbo the clown. Oh.
As Bilbo the clown, Billy has been about circuses all his life. His wife Betty is a comparative newcomer, but a trooper nonetheless.
Well, there were 3 of us, so Betty here and the son, and we started off with David throwing knives.
I think we can learn a lot, firstly, from the guy with the knives. So let's look at his technique here. Betty, stand there for a minute, right? Wear a wee skimpy skirt and I'm going to get a few knives here and chuck them at you.
And that was fine if you're in Jim Beck's. You want to go at it, want to go at the trapeze, don't worry about safety. So he used his mother and he threw the knives at his mother, and it was so funny when Betty got hit.
Well, as a matter of fact, I got stabbed in the arm.
How did this happen?
Well, David was firing the knives and one of them sort of missed. He went too close. One of them sort of missed and I got it right in the arm.
He sort of stabbed me. And I'm like, thinking, Betty, there's no such thing as sort of stab. And it was so funny, the blood was running down my arm, but I would do it again.
Well, I would do it again, all over again.
They don't make women like Betty McCormick anymore. That good stoical woman that just does what her husband tells her and lets the son throw knives at her. Those were the days.
There's just something very homely about this, which is probably timeless. And I'm sure his family cherish it.
It brought back happy emotions, really genuine happy emotions. You just think, wow, did I really do that? And you just go, yes, I did.
From the raw energy of the big top to the cutting-edge technology of TV, the 1980s saw a new BBC programme made for and by young people, Channel 1. And when the show broadcast from Derry, local presenter Jackie Hamilton gave viewers an insight into the city's youth culture and questionable headgear.
Hello, welcome to our second Channel 1 on the road, and tonight we're coming live from the venue in Derry, Londonderry.
That show, Channel 1 on the road, when it's just the 80s. Karen Keaton's there. Karen's like Madonna, completely with the beads, everything, the hair, all Madonna-ish. Jackie Hamilton's shoulder pads. The whole thing was just like my teenage years. It was just encapsulated in one programme.
Just the whole scene, was really buzzing. Like the band scene was buzzing, and everybody was writing their own stuff, and they looked so young.
Channel 1 on the road also provided a rare opportunity for new bands to get on television and grasp their chance to become Derry's next big thing.
In the 80s, it was all about the talent, really, wasn't it? Just young kids getting together, putting a band together, ending up on television. One thing that struck me too was that the music was good. Like those bands, they were good original tunes, and they could all play an instrument.
I thought watching back, it was great that the people such as John Roddy were trying to get a platform for something different in Derry.
Music and fashion go hand in hand, and local model agent John Roddy was determined to drag Derry's fashion scene kicking and screaming into the 1980s. And what better catwalk than Channel 1 studio floor?
Like trying to start a model agency. Like that was like stuff he did in London. It wasn't stuff he did in Derry. But he was deadly serious about it, and the people taking part at the time were deadly serious about it.
He was trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear with some of those boys. Those boys were just like straight off a tractor. This big gulping and a jumper that he'd squeezed into his jeans. And then the girl running around. The girl was hilarious, with that whole big swagger up and down. And it was just hilarious. I mean, and no sophistication about the whole thing.
Well, to find out what is the men of Derry all rushing off to the catwalk, I have with me the man responsible for it all, John Roddy. John, that used to be that all male models were kind of very skinny and the arty type. Yours are all fairly macho and well built.
I think that's maybe the image I'm after, anyway. It takes away from the usual run of the mill, sort of small and skinny. I prefer them tall.
I think he's in awe of Karen Keaton to begin with. And John's trying to tell her about models. It was just funny.
As the glamorous 80s made way for the alternative 90s, Derry's live band scene was witnessing a renaissance. These wannabe rock stars needed a secure space to hone their performance skills. And captured on the BBC TV series 29 Bedford Street was the new Northwest Musicians Collective.
All those guys in that collective were playing in their own bands. Your Stooms, your Cuckoos, your Turtle Assassins. Suddenly the collective comes along and they're going, we can do something bigger together. And then the Nerve Centre comes along and almost puts a capital N and a capital C on those endeavours.
The Nerve Centre was set up in Derry around about 1999, and the main thrust of the Nerve Centre was to provide facilities for bands where they could rehearse and they could get equipment and they could record, which is a very positive thing for them to do, because when the Undertones were starting out, there was no such facility.
We couldn't find a room in the city that people could set up a drum kit and then amplifiers and, you know, play in a rock band or whatever, and somewhere far away that wouldn't make too much of noise and annoy anyone. That is the original sort of vision of the whole place.
The Undertones achieved pop success without this level of support. But as he explained in this BBC documentary, the band's rhythm guitarist John O'Neill was keen to share his skills with this new generation of musicians.
There's about 30 bands now actively use actual building we have. So we've built quite a big following among young people. There really has never been anything for the youth in Derry.
Like John wasn't just an inspiration, but it was just actually the experience that he had throughout the 90s where we were developing the Nerve Centre, and then having him and his band then open it. I suppose for me that's a bit like all your kind of dreams coming true.
This is the hottest ticket in Derry tonight, the reunion concert by the Undertones to mark the official launch of the Nerve Centre here in Derry. And of course, Newsline has a sneak preview.
I think what those guys were really doing was taking control and taking the power. And I think what they were doing was saying, right, let's bring this back to Derry. Let's take control of the space, of the contract, of the deal, of the skills, and let's give that to young Derry musicians.
As the Nerve Centre evolved, so too did its protégés. Animators, photographers and film directors were among its apprentices. Derry had discovered a new cultural heartbeat.
Back then, these guys were absolute innovators. It was only the networks or the broadcasters, your BBCs or ITVs, who could do this stuff. Suddenly, you had kids in Derry doing it for themselves. Behind the scenes in the Nerve Centre, it's not just the Nerve Centre and the trendy stuff that everybody saw up front and the gigs and the bands and the films and the animation. But behind them, almost from the ground upwards, was this army of young people being skilled up. And what, 30 years later, that Nerve Centre is still doing that.
Once upon a time there was a tavern.
From the Embassy to the Undertones, the story of the Northwest's music, culture and young people shows us how we used to live. And thanks to a rich archive and the magic of film, we can bring those bygone days back to life.
Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end.